Nord Stream 2 offers Germany a date with destiny. The twists and turns of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline giving natural gas from Russia to Germany. This is by Pepe Escobar on Zero Hedge. The twists and turns of Nord Stream 2 and S2, the saga, have yielded yet another stunning game changer. It started with Gazprom revealing that Line B string of Nord Stream 2 is intact. Isn't that something? Not only it escaped pipeline terror, but may potentially be used to pump gas to Germany. So, wow, okay, that's a good surprise. That's a good surprise. That confirms once again that Nord Stream 2 is an engineering marvel, he says. In fact, the whole system, the pipes are so strong they were not broken, but merely punctured. Okay, so I guess that's easier to fix. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Novak followed up with a caveat. Restoring of the whole system, including Nord Stream, is possible and requires time and appropriate funds, but first, in Russia's order of priorities, the perpetrators must be conclusively identified. Well, of course. Can you imagine somebody coming into your home and vandalizing your home? You've got to, of course you can fix it, but who did it? Anyway, sources in Moscow confirmed Gazprom's assessment of Nord Stream 2. Even Bloomberg had to report it, that they had a backup pipeline that, of course, has not been damaged and can be used. Subsequently, in Vienna, Austria, attending the OPEC Plus meeting, Novak, the Russian Deputy Prime Minister, remarked that the Russian Federation is ready to supply gas through the second line of Nord Stream 2. This is possible if necessary. So we know it's possible. Necessary will depend on the political decision that Germany takes. Novak also sharply noted that neither Russia nor the Nord Stream operators are allowed to investigate pipeline terror. Russia insists that without its participation, the investigation is flawed. Why will they not allow Russia to investigate what happened to the pipeline? That's the question. Now, whatever the modus operandi of pipeline damages, incompetence was part of the package. No explosive charges were placed or detonated on Line B of NS2. Okay, so then what happened? It means, as Novak said, it's virtually ready for business. Line B is capable of pumping 27.5 billion cubic meters of gas a year, which happens to be half of the total capacity of Nord Stream 2, because it's a smaller backup pipeline. Nord Stream capacity had been reduced to 20% due to the interminable turbine saga before it was completely shut down. Crucially, Line B of Nord Stream 2 would still pump 2.75 times the capacity of the recently inaugurated Baltic pipe from Norway to Poland via Denmark, which basically profits Poland, unlike Nord Stream 2 servicing several European Union customers. So the Baltic pipeline only goes from Norway to Poland, and Nord Stream 2 to Germany and other European Union customers. So, what is going on here? NATO investigates NATO. In a rational world, Berlin would scrap the Russian sanctions pileup and immediately order the start of forever delayed Nord Stream 2, guaranteed to at least attenuate the ongoing process of de-energization, deindustrialization, and deep socioeconomic crisis imposed by the usual suspects on Germany. Now we know that Germany is the powerhouse of Europe. With Germany not able to pay steep energy prices, Germany is just, forget it. There's no more Germany. There's no more European Union. Now, Germany was always a powerhouse because of the fact that it was getting very cheap energy from Russia. But that's no longer the case. People are burning garbage to keep warm. Can you imagine? What happens when they run out of garbage? They'll start burning their books and they'll start burning their furniture. And when that runs out, what happens? Now, that's my comment. Now, but a collective West remains enslaved by geopolitical psychopaths, guided to irrationality, so that's not likely to happen. For starters, the investigation of how pipeline terror blasts happen feels like Kafka rewritten by NATO. The operators of Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2, Nord Stream AG and Swiss-based Nord Stream 2 AG cannot reach the scene of the crime because of absurd restrictions imposed by Denmark and Sweden. The operators need no less than 20 working days to obtain the permits to carry out their own inspections. Copenhagen Police, that's Denmark, is handling the crime scene near the Danish exclusive economic zone, in parallel to the Swedish Coast Guard around Sweden. Now, if this looks like one of those Scandinavian noir series popular on Netflix, it's because it is. With a crucial twist. It's NATO investigating itself. NATO. Sweden is about to enter NATO, with no Russians allowed. All top working hypotheses on pipeline blasts here point to an intra-NATO dirty op against NATO member Germany. This is terrible. This is terrible. NATO, a member of NATO, and they're going against a member of NATO. What is going on here? So any disturbing evidence pointing to NATO actors may conveniently disappear or be tampered with during these long 20 days necessary for the permits to be issued. This is Kafka. Meanwhile, this is what we used to read in Lit 101 in college, right? The surreal Kafka. Now, meanwhile, we were always asking questions that were never answered. Now, meanwhile, the consequences of the energy war imposed by the U.S. on Europe against Russia will keep piling up and cost the EU a whopping 1.6 trillion euros, according to a report by Yakov and Partners, former division of McKinsey in Russia. So, considering Nord Stream 2 deprived European Union plus non-stop rising energy prices on the spot market, the European Union GDP may decrease as much as 11.5%. That's 1.7 trillion euros, with about 16 million people thrown into unemployment. That's of course, it goes without saying. If production stops, people will lose their jobs. EU gas storage at current high levels, 90%, does not mean having enough gas for the winter. Total gas storage amounts to about 90 days of demand. 90 days, that's 3 months. October, November, December. The EU could easily be out of gas by March or even earlier at the current pace of just a trickle of gas flowing. It means that the European Union will have to cut gas consumption by at least 20% overall, and never forget that imported Norwegian or American gas is ridiculously more expensive than the fixed contract Russian gas. The return of the Morgenthau Plan, the sanctions dementia over never stops though. The G7 in 3 subsequent stages will target Russia crude, diesel, and the naphtha. According to the US Treasury, they still insist on oil price cap, which neither Russia nor several global South customers will follow. The big picture remains the same. The pipeline blast was a desperate gambit to keep Germany from concluding a sanctions carve-out for Nord Streams with Russia. A secret channel of negotiation was in effect. It's enlightening to consider that all previous actions by Berlin and Moscow delayed and restricted gas flow were carried out to keep the empire from following through on its threat of terminating Nord Stream 2. And then the empire made its move. From Moscow's point of view, that changes nothing. In the grand chessboard, the Kremlin has manipulated Washington's absolute desperation in refusing to admit that the greatest foreign policy debacle since Vietnam. The Russians, meanwhile, keep pursuing the objectives of the special military operation, which is about to metastasize into a counterterrorism operation. As it stands, Moscow is not affected by the interconnected energy, fuel, and resource crisis coupled with immense worldwide supply chain disruptions. They are essentially bemused spectators contemplating the slowdown of industrial production in the Eurozone coupled with capital outflows, the rise of inflation, and the about to explode social protests. There is a dangerous window of irrational imperial actions from now on the G20 next month in Bali, and afterwards we will have a completely different ballgame, not only Ukraine, but mostly across the mired in distress European Union. The Morgenthau Plan after World War II was concocted to literally starve Germany to death via the destruction of the Ruhr coal mines. It's strikingly similar to the Straussian play by American neocon to cut Germany off from Russian natural gas and Nord Stream. The first Morgenthau Plan would have led to the deindustrialization of Germany, and according to Clause 3, the entire Ruhr should not only be stripped of all existing industries, but also weakened and controlled that it cannot, for the foreseeable future, become an industrial area, end quote. So the ending of Germany as an industrial state would have created massive permanent unemployment affecting 30 million people, according to Henry Stimson, the U.S. Secretary of War. Morgenthau's response was that the surplus population could go to North Africa. U.S. intel was very much aware of the rapprochement between Berlin and Moscow, and Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 was the signature gambit of the Morgenthau Plan, remixed by the Straussian neocon combo. And yet it's not over till the Wagnerian big fat lady sings. No need for Gotterdammerung. Germany may have its own destiny on its hands after all. Just turn on the switch on Nord Stream 2. So we'll see what happens. This is authored by Pepe Escobar on Zero Hedge. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.